Absolute pleasure and honor to welcome you to this circular economy workshop entitled Circularity in Africa, Food Systems. And we know food system is one of the 5 big bets of CIA on circularity in Africa. For those that have not been introduced to ACEAs before, I would like to take this opportunity to give you a bit of a background on us. ACEAs was established in 2016 as a non-profit company. We are registered in South Africa as per Companies Act of the country. We now operate in 33 countries across the continent. We've got over 100 experts in the network. Our purpose really is to build a restorative and circular economy for Africa that generates well-being and prosperity, inclusive of all its people through new forms of economic production and consumption, which maintain and regenerate its environmental resources. This is achieved through research, training, knowledge, sharing, networking like we are having today, capturing and reporting circular case studies. We are a membership-based organization. Our membership-based network brings together people from the private sector, public sector, non-profit organization who have ambitions to accelerate the just transition to a circular economy in Africa through collaboration and implementation of projects. My colleague will post a few links in the chat for you to get more details on how to be part of our network, keep up to date with our activities, different membership options that can be applied for. So please be on the lookout for that information on the chat. One of the most recent achievements of ACEAs is being invited to co-host this year's World Circular Economy Forum. World Circular Economy Forum is an annual global initiative of Finland through the Finnish Innovations Fund, which is called CITRA. The first forum in 2017 brought together a global audience to chart a course for a sustainable and resource-efficient economy. This year, for the first time ever, in the World Circular Economy Forum will be held in Africa from the 6th to the 8th of December. The title or the theme of this year's forum will be From Africa to the World. The forum will be held in Kigali, Rwanda, and online with global studios that can be arranged worldwide and specific African studios that will be organized by ACEAs across Africa. Alongside CITRA and ACEAs, this year forum will be co-hosted by the African Circular Economy Alliance and the Republic of Rwanda and other international partners. As you might have seen, today's workshop is an official side event of this forum, which will be in December. This is the 5th and final workshop of a 5-part series that will follow the themes of African Circular Economy Alliance 5 big bets, which is fashion, textiles, food systems, which is what we are talking about today, electronics, packaging, and the built environment. The past 4 workshops were talking to the other big bets. These workshops have been taking place since July, leading up to the main forum in December, and some of the information and details of the forum in December have been shared already, and there would still more to come. The aim of today's workshop really is to build momentum for the World Circular Economy Forum and stimulate conversation on circularity in food systems in Africa. We'll do this by focusing on few successful circular initiatives in the industry and talking through barriers to entry and opportunities that are available. Before I hand over to Pietra, our moderator, I just want to share a few housekeeping rules for the session today. Please note we are recording the session, and by staying online, you are consenting to being recorded. Please be active in the chat and the open discussion. We will have comments shared later or questions that you might have. And at the end of the day, we are all working towards the same goal, which is accelerating the transition to a circular economy. So the more we share and learn from each other, the better for all of us. A recording of the session and the summary documents with the learnings and conclusions will be shared afterwards. At this point, I'd like to introduce Pietre, our moderator. Pietre is a senior policy officer for waste and circular economy at the European Environmental Bureau. He has been working on those subjects at the EEB since 2013. Previously, he worked at the Polish Ministry of the Environment and Polish Humanitarian Action in South Sudan. At the EEB, he is responsible for chairing the Waste Working Group that comprises European Union level and national experts with hands-on experience on waste and circular economy policies. He often organizes events related to circular economy packages at the EU, national, local level with related partners. He's well networked, sitting in advisory bodies of few organizations, working on circular economy and waste policies. Often invited to review policy papers and reports related to waste and circular economy. He collaborates closely with other NGOs and think tanks working on the circular economy, as well as progressive municipalities and businesses. Piotr gained much experience in the EU policies during the lengthy revision of the EU waste directives, advocating at each stage of the co-legislation and engaging with various stakeholders. He also has an international experience advising on waste policies in Bangladesh, India, Kenya, Oman, Balkans, and Turkey. He has presented at over 200 events worldwide, including high-level parliamentary hearings. Piotr, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Ntobeko, and good afternoon or good morning to everyone. Thank you for Ntobeko for the introduction and also the housekeeping rules, which make my work easier, and for this long introduction of myself. In a nutshell, I am first of all very much honored and happy to moderate this last of the series, this last webinar of the series by ASEAN under the umbrella of World Circular Economy side events. This one is about agriculture, food systems, which is very close to my heart personally, because as I was also working in South Sudan and in Congo in agricultural projects, but also professionally, it's also probably the most important circularity or sector in Africa, producing sector, and very much with a lot of opportunities if the sector goes fully circular, if it's ever possible, but we will look at that. I don't want to spend time on too much on the context, because you explained very well. I just want to say how the webinar will look like. It is a 2 hours webinar. It is not an usual webinar when we only hear people speaking. This will be interactive. First of all, we'll hear 2 cases just to inspire us, and in cases that are very strong circularity elements. Of course, those cases are not comprehensive, are not explaining the whole situation in Africa. This is really 2 cases. Later on, we will have the panel discussion, where we have more participants, more speakers, as you see now on the screen, all of them from Africa, and then we will have questions answers. Please ask those questions in the chat or in the question answer box. We will gather them, collect them, and group them. Please just be concise in your questions and questions. Then we'll have open discussion, where we'll invite also all of you to say comments as well. Sometimes also with using microphone. Just in this case, make sure that you have a proper sound system for that and microphone. So, but I will explain the rules before each of the elements. Now, case studies. later panel discussion, question answer, and open discussion. All together, we shall be finishing in about 2 hours, a bit less than 2 hours from now. So let me start by going to the first case study we're gonna listen. And the case study is coming from Louis, who will present to us his project called Fresh Life Produce. And Louis, we will listen from you about your project, and you will introduce it to us briefly. What is interesting for me, how you developed from one idea, which was maybe you realized that was not working well enough, into another one that you are now convinced will work. So we'll hear from you, the Fresh Life Produce Bio and based in South Africa. Over to you, Louis.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this opportunity. Very excited to tell you more about what we do and how we work. Just want to make sure it's presenting properly. There you go. Yeah, so at Fresh Life Produce, so like you said, my name is Louis Gainsberg. I'm the founder of the company Fresh Life Produce. We strive to transform low-income communities from food insecure consumers to producers. And we truly believe in the circular economy and the 3 pillars of the circular economy, and how we try our best to follow those pillars is we create a lot of what we call home growers. So people that we motivate people to grow at home, and that reduces food miles and also a lot of food waste that we have a big problem with all around Africa. We also use recycled plastic to create our growing system, which I'll talk about just a bit later. And we've also used our growing medium is a coconut coir, which was a waste product, but it now allows us to use almost 10 times less water than we normally use in normal growing systems. How we started was in 2016. I got an opportunity to build a rooftop garden in Cape Town using aquaponics as a main growing system. Also played around with hydroponics, with traditional hydroponics with PVC pipes, but quickly realized these types of sustainable growing technologies is not always suited for the problems that we have in South Africa, which we have quite a wide range of. So we had to figure out, how does a system look that works for what we want to do? And we followed 3 guidelines. We wanted to create something that can, a person must be able to grow their own food no matter where they are, what their level of knowledge is, and what their financial circumstances. So what we needed to put in place is it needs to be a compact kit that is simple to put together and affordable and have a high yield. And we came up with a growing system called the African Grower. The African Grower consists of 4 pipes that click into one another, a rope that runs to the middle, coconut coir that you place inside, and a fertilizer that's called a controlled release fertilizer that lasts up to 6 months. So once you've planted your seedlings in there, you just manually water your system on a regular basis, and your plants have everything that they need. So we are able to save water, able to save effort, save time, money, and a lot of different other things. But now that we had our technology, we thought, okay, we have the solution. We're going to just go into the communities and make the difference. But we quickly failed horribly. So we needed to understand, why does small-scale agricultural projects fail so often? And we found that it's to motivate people, you need to have a potential income stream from that growing that you're doing. And it's practically impossible to connect informal to formal. So the formal market, and the reason for that is this formal market needs a certain volume at a certain time, which is very difficult in the communities. It also needs a certain standard of the product and a certain look, which is very important for them. And then they also need they dictate the price. So our solution was to create a circular economy that can feed itself by establishing agricultural incubators that creates a network of home growers that grows for themselves, and to help these incubators then create their own market that then can buy this produce that's grown in the community. So we have 3 stages in our solution. Stage 1 is introducing the technology by transforming local institutions into agricultural incubators. Stage 2 is to change the mindsets of the community by teaching agricultural entrepreneurs how to use the technology and to spread it into the network of home growers. And thirdly is we try to help these incubators have a value add facility where they can then become the market for that community. So our stage one was to establish these agricultural incubators by using the technology, our African Grower. And these are some of our projects that we're currently running in Durban. We have some in Cape Town. We have quite a lot spread across South Africa. And our system also consists of 3 different sizes of tunnels that we've developed to be able to handle our technology. We then use these incubators to train agricultural entrepreneurs and spread the technology by creating home growers that's linked to the central point, and that's helped by them on a consistent basis, creating value-add opportunities. So these are some of our home growers that we've established in Durban, and that's how we then grow our farms, by getting more people included in this network of home growers. So we then equip these incubators with the value-add facilities, and they then become the internal market for what is grown in the community, and becomes that circular economy that we need. So how we do that is we try to establish plant-based restaurants that are able to buy the produce at a fair trade price. Because agriculture has some of the lowest profit margins, we need a facility that can pay more for what they are growing, because they just don't have the scalability option. Once we do that, that restaurant then becomes the market of that community, and that can buy that produce and create that motivation. So once we are establishing the entire value chain at our incubators, only then our incubators can become sustainable. So we have the technology, we create then the incubators that spreads the technology into the home growers. We then help add the value add facility, which then becomes the market. And then after they also produce the meals, they can also produce sauces. They can then produce a product that can be sold to the formal market at a better price, and that income can spread into the whole community. So how we make sure that we focus on regenerating the societal environment and how to make it really robust is by adding all these different elements into our solution. So we start off by introducing the Agri Incubator, which is our catalyst, and that introduces agriculture to the community. And that then has the skills with the agricultural entrepreneurs that we then train. This incubator then becomes a multi-purpose center by adding a prep facility or a value-add facility. And this value-add facility has the capability of then introducing plant-based meals into the community by not only selling it, but also sharing knowledge of what the benefits of this is for the community. So once the community understands that they can now become part of this circle by growing their own food, they can now sell it to the incubator. The incubator can then produce a meal that they then want. They can then purchase that meal. They can also get a lot of knowledge from this incubator of all the benefits that brings to their health and their well-being. Hopefully the value add facility will then explore more areas of what is a product that the formal market wants, and then can produce it into like a sauce range or something that is sellable outside of the informal market as well. But once one has the circle in place, our environment becomes much more robust. Okay. Thank you very much for that opportunity.
Thank you, Louis, for inspiring all of us with your project that has this very strong element of inclusiveness, where everybody, and basically most of the population in Africa are farmers or have the capacity, have the knowledge, but you enable them to access the market and to work collectively also to improve their techniques and also face the challenges that may happen. So thank you very much for that. There are already some questions for you, and I ask everyone to keep asking questions. We will just gather them for the question and answer session, as well as the open discussion where everybody can actually take a mic. We will distribute the mic to them. So thank you. Let's move to the second case study, business case also by Konstantin. Konstantin, who is based out of Tanzania, and he has a project called AgriLife Limited Bio. So, and this, you will, of course, Konstantin, nice to see you. Welcome. You will explain in detail, but what is a highlight for me is the black soldier fly technique, which is spread in different developing countries as well. I know them from Asia, But let's hear from you. How do you develop it? How do you implement it? How do you face challenges and resolve them as well? So yeah, over to you, Konstantin, out of Tanzania, Black Soldier Flies, AgriLife Limited, Leo.
Yeah, thank you very much, Piotr. So I'm very grateful and honored to be here to present my case. I hope everyone can hear me, right?
We can hear Konstantin, and soon we will see the screen.
Yeah, so I'm trying to share my screen now.
Yeah, just full screen and
yeah, thank you.
I'm sure everyone is looking for what is Black Soldier Fly, but over to you.
Yeah, okay, so Konstantin Edward from Tanzania. I am the founder and managing director of AgriLife. So I will start with an imaginary story. So take a moment to imagine a life where smallholder poultry farmers have an access to sustainable and affordable feed for their poultry. Again, take a moment to imagine a life where waste is no longer a problem. So this is no longer a possibility. It has already started happening here in Tanzania. So I founded AgriLife. AgriLife is a startup that's using Black Soldier Fly just to solve two problems. So one is organic waste. We have more than 10,000 tons of organic waste generated every single day in our community. And the municipality doesn't have the capacity to process or recycle all those tons of organic waste generated every single day. The second problem is a high cost of feed for poultry farmers, of which 60% is due to the protein cost. So AgriLife, we are using Black Soldier Fly. This is a native insect for Africa that has tremendous ability to convert organic waste into sustainable source of protein and fertilizer for farmers to use. So it takes Black Soldier Fly just over a week, so to be exactly 14 days, to convert this food waste into a harvestable protein. Our product is cycle by design. So in a way that we start with organic waste. So currently we are sourcing organic waste from the universities because they have a lot of food remains because they have many students that are eating there. So we are collecting organic waste from there and then we are transporting it into our facility and we're introducing the Black Soldier Fly larvae to process the waste. Within 14 days, the Black Soldier Fly would have already processed the organic waste into the feed for poultry farmers and fertilizer for farmers to use for crop nourishment. So we get animal product from the chicken that are eating the feed, and then the animal product, they become consumer goods like eggs, and then they become organic waste at the end. So we're using organic waste again into our system. So it's like a closed loop system where there's no waste that is remaining into the environment. So our revenue model is very simple. So we are selling Black Soldier Fly larvae to poultry farmers at $1 per kilogram. So by operating in our business, we are not only impacting our country economically, but we are also environmental. So we are reducing carbon footprint. The current solution that they use as a source of protein for poultry feed or for animal feed in general, they use soybean or fish meal. But for the soybean, for every 1 hectare of soybean production, they produce 1.65 tons of carbon dioxide emission. But for AgriLife, we are vice versa. So for every 1 ton of organic waste that we recycle, we are reducing 2.94 metric tons of carbon dioxide emission. So we started 2021 and we were able to reduce more than 100 metric tons of carbon dioxide emission. And this year, we're hoping to do more. So our target market are poultry farmers, and we are targeting 3.7 million poultry farmers in Tanzania, and we will scale up as we grow our company. So last year, we were able to work with 6 feed millers. We were able to serve up to 200 poultry farmers. We were able to produce 10 tons of protein that are Black Soldier Fly larvae, and also generate a revenue of $10,000. And this year, we're hoping to triple it because we have already doubled the amount. we understand there's a lot of startups that are doing grass fed flies and even traditional farmers, but we try to be different in one way. So we have our only patentable technology, that is black soldier fly larvae incubator. With this incubator, we have a capacity to produce, it has helped us to increase our production capacity up to 7%. So what it does is, it has reduced the black soldier fly preparation period from the traditional 30 days to only 10 days. So with that 10 days, we can increase our production very fast and meet the ever increasing demand for the protein. AgriLife is operated by a team of 4 award-winning co-founders. So I myself am Masters of Agricultural Economics and Management and the Managing Director. And also we're working with Adriana Olashko. She has a bachelor degree in entomology and she's working as a research and development specialist. We have Herman Edward, has a bachelor in business administration, and he is our director of operation. And lastly, we have Grace Emmanuel. She has a bachelor in marketing and management, and she is our marketing manager. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll be here to answer any question that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Konstantin. I'm sure there are questions. Me myself, I have some questions too, but let's keep them for the questions and answers, because now we'll invite different panelists, and I will quickly just introduce them to you to share their views, their opinions, and also what they do in the agriculture, circularity in agriculture. Those 2 case studies, first one very inclusive and opening markets for small farmers, and second one very circular, like totally, you know, it's about the organic matter value being even advanced when it's not only recycled, it's upcycled. You're turning bio-waste into a product that can be sold, and also fertilizer that also can be sold. If that was one of the questions actually also, whether you sell fertilizers, but let's keep that for the next round. Now we are moving to the panel discussion. So I think we should have now about 7 people on the screen, if you can see them. We will have Rosa. We'll have Rosa Mduta, who is the impact officer at Boponic, and works in the various sectors: agriculture, water, sanitation, nutrition, WASH, basically, and will share with us few of her thoughts. I will let you, Rose, introduce yourself, and I will have some questions to you. Let me just quickly tell who is here also. We will also have Dominic Kavayusia Taimba, also from Kenya, if I'm not mistaken, that is the IT practitioner and developed a software to help farmers, especially small farmers, to access the market. We'll also have Audrey S. Darko. She works at Save on Sake and as a regenerative lead. I'm sorry, I don't know where are you based, Audrey, but you will explain that. Then we will have also Sylvie Mukabekazi from Circular Food Systems for Rwanda project. And at the end, then we'll have Johan Renzi van Rensburg from out of South Africa, with a lot of very long experience in agriculture, in also systemic thinking. And that will be a nice wrap up also from you, Renzi, to look at systemic questions and challenges that we need to face to actually move to a effective and correct circular systems that deliver. So those, if I'm not, I didn't miss anyone, I think, for now. Rosa, you're first on my list, and please share your thoughts about the circularity in food systems in Africa. And maybe if I can guide your intervention a little bit, we would like to hear from you, as you are the first. If you can answer directly, let's go already to circularity. Why do you think that circularity is not embraced in Africa yet? Or maybe my statement is not correct also. Please challenge that. And what are the major challenges that entrepreneurs in agri sector are facing? And so this is the challenge. And now solutions, what interventions can be put in place to move from linear to circular approaches in agriculture? This opening, thank you very much. Rose, please go ahead.
Thanks, Piotrek. I think that's a nice guidance on how to structure my thoughts. And thanks to the two entrepreneurs that have presented. I have questions for you, so I'll stay behind to ask those questions during the Q&A. My name is Rose Duta. I work for Bopink, which is headquartered in the Netherlands, but I sit in the Nairobi office, Kenya. I support different projects in agri-wash, nutrition. We also do energy sector, but for the purpose of this webinar, I'll focus on a program that is funded by IKEA called OFAMS, which is an agribusiness accelerator. By the end of the program, we'll have accelerated 40 agribusinesses in the circular space in Kenya and Uganda, 20 Kenya, 20 Uganda. Now we are going into cohort 2. We've already worked with the 20 circular agribusinesses, and a lot of learnings we have seen from that, which I'll share some in this webinar, of course, focusing on the questions that Piotrek has asked. So straight into answering what the questions were. Why is circularity not embraced in Africa? From my interactions with entrepreneurs and even the landscaping studies that we've conducted before we started the accelerator, there's a lot of lack of awareness of what circularity is, because we've seen a thin line between value addition and circularity, especially when we are sending call for applications. Most of the companies that apply are doing value addition. So after we do our learning events, it's when they realize also circularity is not a value addition. And I'll give an example. Someone who is drying fruits for export is not necessarily doing a circularity, but is mostly doing value addition. Why do I say so? I don't see how a person who is doing dried fruits for export will go and pick spoiled fruits and dry them for export. They'll pick the best size, the best in quantity and quality, and those are the ones they are going to dry for export. So we still have a lot of wasted fruits that are as a result of fruits that are processed for export. So there's a lot of that inhibits even the products when they go into the market. Another thing that I've seen is the policies around circularities are still very nascent. There's still a lot that needs to be done in that space, especially at the policy level, because policies are there to support clean energy in terms of sustainability and climate smart solutions. But around circularity, it's a new concept that even the policy makers are still struggling to crunch the information around it. So I feel like that is a big inhibition, especially as entrepreneurs try to enter this space. For example, when we were doing the landscaping studies, we visited the Kenya Bureau of Standards, and we asked if they had a standard for example, a circular product like a coating for fruits that elongates the shelf life to, say, for example, 2 weeks. And they said, no, they don't have a standard. Why? Is it because the product does not exist, or is it because it's a very new concept that they also still need to build standards around it together with the entrepreneurs? So that I see is a lot of, causes a lot of inhibition that makes circularity not be embraced, because basically the awareness is not there. To the next question, which you asked, what are the barriers for the entrepreneurs? I feel like most of them say finances, but how I see it is that the products from the financial institutions are not tailored to fit entrepreneurs in the circular system, because they are mostly startups, so they don't have enough collateral to give to for example, a bank that would be able to give them credibility that they are going to have return on investment. So because of their level of operations, they are left out from by the products that are tailored for agribusinesses. This is in particular for circular agribusinesses. And I feel like most products that are there are more focused on building agribusinesses that are at a growth level as opposed to startups. And we would all agree that almost most of the entrants into the circular space are pretty small and would go for very small price tags, especially if they are applying for loans. So that I see as a big inhibition. Also, as I had mentioned again, policies that do not favor these startups that are entering the circular space. Just to mention a few, and also the rest of the panelists will also pick up others. And what interventions do I see?
Rose,
Yes.
Rose, if I can stop you here, because we will come to the interventions. I know I asked you about interventions, but I think we can conclude also, or like at the later stage, as everyone also explains the challenges. So together we look at interventions. And I already appreciate the discussion in the chat. Some of us think that circularity has been there always in Africa, and also this is partly true. And we don't have to call it circular economy. We can call it anything else. We don't care the name. But now, actually, it brings me to Dominic, because we spoke about farmers and their. Dominic, are you with us? Yes, Dominic. Sure. We spoke about farmers and their. I promise I will come back to the issue of regeneration, but I want to focus a bit on farmers and the barrier for them to access the markets. What are you doing actually? I know that you created a software to help small farmers, but how does it look in practice, and what do you think is needed? Or wait, sorry, let's keep the solutions for later. But what are the main problems for farmers when it comes to accessing the market?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So I think the challenges we have in Africa are very well documented, right? And we understand them very well. And I think what we've seen in the last few years, there have been a lot of solutions and a lot of antics out there. And I think my concern has always been we build in more applications. But when you go to the farmers, right, you still find the same challenges we had before we start talking about the ag-tech revolution and solution. Those issues are still there. So the question is, why the issue? So what I find is that we have a lot of players basically in the same value chain, but operating a very silent approach. What do I mean? So if I go to farmers today, and the farm, they'll tell you already they have almost like 7 different, either of takers or players or service providers in the industry trying to offer similar solutions. So mainly the question is, how do we allow collaboration between all these players, right? So I think the biggest challenge is that we have one farmer being approached by different service providers offering almost similar solution. So where is it the opportunity for me is actually collaboration. But also back to the question around circular, I believe that solution has always been there. I was brought up by my grandmother, and I remember that's what they used to practice. If you have excess of certain product, you go to your neighbor and you can exchange, you get whatever they have in excess. I think the question is how we are sort of reintroducing the solution. Maybe the naming, we need to simplify it, right? And I think there's a huge opportunity either at the village level or also in the urban. And I think we can always find market for these farmers here.
I was muted, sorry. Thanks, Dominic. And I understand your solution also brings a bit more the different service providers who can deliver different activities, not only access to the market, but also, yeah, that's the main thing, the collaboration and sharing the knowledge. Also, there might be an issue a solution of bringing some funding together through your service providers. We'll come back to funding in a second.
Okay.
But thanks for that. As I promised, we have to touch about regeneration, because we can call it circularity. We can also call it regeneration. And we have an expert, Audrey, with us, who is a regenerative lead. And yeah, of course, in Africa, wherever you put some seeds, they will grow at some point because the soil is fertile. But there is also a huge problem of climate issues that are addressed, that are impacting Africa very much. And how would you say, Audrey, we have to face the challenges of climate change, how to battle the soil degradation, and how are you supporting farmers in view of those challenges and barriers to transition to more regenerative agriculture, more than it has been so far? In some, of course, we cannot also put all Africa in one bucket because there are so different regions. in some places the regeneration is still on, and then the nature is not affected so much, but in many other there is. So how would you expand your thoughts on the regeneration? Is it really regenerative, and what we need to have it more regenerative, the agriculture in Africa?
Thanks for that question, Patrick. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Audrey, and I'm lead at Selbin Sake. We're based in Ghana, but we'll be across the continent pretty soon. We're focused on regenerative agriculture and a focus on soil health. With 95% of the foods that we grow being grown in soils, it's imperative that we look at that and how that impacts increase in food production and the likes. What we feel would speed up the transition to a more regenerative agriculture system would be first identifying farming communities, or farmers specifically, as partners and not beneficiaries, right? Partners in the sense that first of all, they need to be just as knowledgeable as we are, right, about the ecosystem, the impact of our activities on the climate, and getting them involved in every step of the way. For us, we've looked at how best we partner with biomass waste generating communities that are churning out tons of biomass waste, whether it's rice husks, whether it's sugarcane, bagasse, and the likes, and how do we convert those waste into soil amendments or soil inputs that are readily accessible and available to the farming community. So how we're enabling them overcome those barriers and really transition to regenerative agriculture is by creating the systems where once they have these biomass waste available, we're able to process it within the center, which is situated within the communities. This allows them to have access to the organic soil inputs that will enable them to increase food production. The second bit I feel would be to establish demonstration farms. I think a lot of the panelists have spoken about education and training, and it's imperative that they get to see firsthand what it means to actually practice more resilient and regenerative practices. So they need to have access to demo farms that from scratch, from beginning to the end, how we're employing more drought resilience in our approach to farming, how we're making sure that soil is less disturbed, etc. So these are the lenses that we look at it for us at Selbin Sake. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Audrey. Let's touch upon later on also on circularity practices that are part of the resilience and regeneration, such as biomass waste to soil. Maybe after Joan, also systemic approach. But before that, thanks a lot. Let's move on to Sylvie Mugabe-Kazi. I will ask you a question, but first, please introduce yourself and the project in Rwanda that you are working on.
Yes, thank you, Patrick, and the audience. My name is Sylvie Mugabe-Kazi. I'm based in Rwanda. I work for the Cleaner Production and Climate Innovation Center as the Chief Executive Officer. I am a chemist by training with passion around environmental protection, but also to help the private sector to increase the environmental performance and productivity. So this includes quality improvement and process improvement and optimization as well. So for the CPCIC, the Cleaner Production and Climate Innovation Center, it's a part of a global network of national cleaner production centers with the aims of working together with the industries, the private sector and SMEs to do a technical assistance around increasing the environmental performance, but reducing pollution and resource efficiency, so forth. So we are a local partner under the project, the Circular Food System, which is led by the World Resource Institute with funding from ICARE Foundation. And the project started this year and it will last 3 years. That's what I can say around introduction. Maybe if you allow, I can also continue with the expectation from the project, right?
Okay, yeah, sure. I just wanted to say that, yeah, you are from Rwanda. That's where the World Circular Economy Forum will happen in less than 1 month, which is an occasion for me to remind everyone here to possibly register online or come. I will be there as well. Many of us will be there. So please look at the chat. My colleague Lara is pasting different relevant links. So also regarding this World Circular Economy Forum in Rwanda, that will happen. And yes, so please expand on what are the expectations on the circular food system project in Rwanda.
Yes.
What do you see in 3 years when you finish the project? And I understand it's more a pilot to be replicated than in different also regions in Africa.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Patrick, and welcome to the Green City of Africa. I mean the Kigali during the World Circular Economy Forum that is in December. I hope everyone have registered and you have already identified some good places where we need to visit. So the circular food system for Rwanda, it is an integrative project around the food value chain from food production, processing, consumption, but we are also working to close the loop around value addition, not only for businesses, but for the commonly wasted material, that they are not wasted, but reused efficiently. So the project has got 2 work streams. We are working to do a policy gap analysis, a policy analysis, which mainly will identify alignment around a policy document and actions required. For that one, we have completed, and we have really identified that building on the country and the government will to promote the circular economy. Some policy documents are there, and actions are really supporting putting in place the circularity in business. And another part, it is to look at the SME landscaping to see which SMEs are in the circularity already, and what are the gaps there that we can work on to improve so that we create the opportunity. Of course, around the circular economy, there is a problem in the food system, which is the food waste, food losses, and Rwanda is not left behind when you see the latest report, like the one from that state that 164 kilograms are wasted on the GDP, and we are working to see what are to identify the hotspots of that part and to turn that into opportunities. So for each problem, the solutions is a business opportunity, and we work to support SMEs to identify those. And as my colleague has identified, the main gap that we have identified is knowledge, the capacity for SMEs to translate what is circular economy, to identify the metrics for business so that they are able, if you claim you are a circular business, what are the indicators, what are the metrics involved there? So as we move forward, we will work under the SME work stream to identify really and to share the knowledge, but also to define the metrics in the agri-food system to make it circular. What can be measured around that? And in the policy part, we will work to see also how we can enable alignment of different documents, because we have found that circular economy is recent, especially looking at in the policy document. So there are older policy that are not aligned with the current practices of circular economy, that does not set clear actions. So we will plan to have a multi-stakeholder platform that will enable, that will unlock the required actions in policy, how we can mainstream the circularity, especially for food, into the supporting policies and institutions. So thank you, that's what I'm sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvie. Sounds like a good methodology to really bring together different stakeholders. Here, for the case of food systems, I'm sure that similar stakeholders platforms should be also organized for different streams, but that's going to be discussed in different webinars and also at the World Circular Economy Forum soon. I just wanted to say now that we have one more panelist, but we also have still our case. Sorry, can Sylvie, if you could mute. We still have our case studies presenters with us. I will come back with some questions to them. But over to Joan, who is a very experienced person. I will not even try to say all your CV here because it's very long. But you are the scientist, the rural development scientist with experience, practical, also hands-on experience, with a passion for socio-economic development as well, at the so-called base of the pyramid. If you could explain what is this base of the pyramid, and also in the same time, if you can wrap up in your vision of the system, and if you want to react to any of the panelists' statements, then please go ahead, like with this systemic vision. John.
Thanks, Piotrek. Yeah, as you've indicated, I'm retired development scientist, but I would rather refer to myself as a refired development scientist at this point in time, because I now support other young socioeconomic development champions to change the base of the pyramid or the informal economy context, and in rural Africa, that's primarily the agricultural environment. I think my contention is that, you know, even though the circular economy has got very good concepts and very good elements, if we don't bring those elements into a systemic perspective and we change the whole system, we won't be able to scale up any of the circular economy kind of elements. And if I think in terms of systems and subsystems, you know, I sort of think primarily on the one hand of, let's say, the human participants or the practitioners, as one element or one subsystem that we have to address. You know, that goes about mindsets and skills and all kinds of things. And then we have to address the organizational context. How do you organize people in the small, but also how do you organize the larger context? And then the third subsystem is the resource context, which includes the technology elements. So if we don't find a way of bringing all of these things together so that they all reinforce each other, then we're gonna keep on working with loose elements or sort of smaller interventions that doesn't change the major system as a whole. Luigilis has referred to it a little bit in terms of creating a circular economy, which is just one element of it in terms of saying prevent the formal economy from being extractive towards the informal economy, you know, or from the formal economy to bully the informal economy. So I think we need to think about circularity in much bigger pictures than just, you know, elements like waste reduction or energy loops that we close and things like that. I think that's sort of the main thing I want to address at this point in time.
Thank you. That's what we also precisely do at the EB. We want to show that the small incremental changes, improvements, only do a tiny bit to improve the situation. We really need to rethink the whole system, which sometimes is a legacy of wrong systems that were imposed by sometimes the colonial systems and the European systems. We definitely don't want to see that happen in Africa, because you still have a very strong, as you call it, base of the pyramid, farmers, actors in the system that deliver much better and effective, and they have to be supported. And speaking about support, I want to come back to Rose, because I asked you a question, and now let's look at the solutions. And I also want to make it a bit more a discussion. It's a discussion panel. Later on, we'll have another session on questions and answers from the participants. But let's make it a bit more a discussion. So if you all have now, you can all jump in. Just raise your hand like this, or with the panel here, with the Zoom, and I will give you the voice whenever you want to react to anything that was said already, or is going to be mentioned now, as of now. So Rose, I wanted to ask you about what do you think, what interventions on different levels, be it technological, policy levels, or financial levels, have to be put in place to move from linear agriculture or linear systems to more circular?
Thanks, Piotrek. I think it starts from the policy level. Favorable, then I think even the financiers are willing to get into that space because they know the playing field is already conducive for the entrepreneurs to thrive. Otherwise, if the policies don't favor the entrepreneurs, even the financiers are not willing to get into that space because the risk is too high for these businesses. So I think, as Sylvie said about reviewing the policies that exist, that is a very important step towards capacity building the SMEs and really giving them the push that is needed. And all these things around technology and machinery and all will come later when the policy and the playing field is conducive for these businesses to thrive.
Thanks, Rose. So let me follow up with a provocative question also to you and to all. Are governments equipped to work on ambitious policies, to implement them?
Well, I wouldn't say they are, and it takes a lot of conversations, especially from, I would say, people who are who have prowess in the space of agri-circularity, to bring the governments to agree to have these conversations. Because if we continue having these conversations in silos, then the governments are left aside to just come and say, okay, we are going to ratify. What follows after ratification? Are you enforcing what has been put down as a policy? It needs combined efforts, the governments coming together with the private sector to have a conversation that will reach agreeable interventions that will be put down for everyone to pick an action point, so that the government is able to put the private sector on accountability checks, and the private sector is able to put the government on accountability checks. Otherwise, if everyone formulates their own policies in silos, then there's no linkage, and everyone feels like it is not my responsibility. So the entrepreneurs and the consumers in the end are the ones who are left in the middle, trying to grapple with the unfriendly ecosystem. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you, Rose. I could continue, but I also want all of you to raise your hands whenever you want to react. But picking up what you said, it seems that businesses can often be the pioneers of the change, and then governments can adapt. It's true, but there is also another aspect. There is science, and there is a climate change, climate crisis. And back to Audrey. Audrey, you know the problems of the planet. You know the soil degradation, and is all those challenges, the triple crisis we have: biodiversity, climate, resources. Is it enough? Does it create enough urgency for governments and businesses to react?
I think it does, but the question is, do we recognize it? Do we accept the urgency and embrace it? Are we moving fast, to tackle it? And I think also giving a voice to those on the front lines, especially the rural farmers, especially those within the local communities and the more decentralized systems. Government does work in centralized systems. We are aware that, it's a bit more bureaucratic. It takes time for quite a number of the policies, etc., to trickle down to those are the front lines. And the question now is, how do we empower them? Those are the grassroots, to actually start championing the change right before government sets in. And for me, back to your question on how do we then get them from a linear to a more circular approach, I'll definitely touch on finance. And how do we democratize that? How do we get finance getting down to the front line as quickly as possible, and getting them equipped, right, to move from practicing linear conventional methods to more circular methods. If there's one thing I've recognized, working with farming communities, is the fact that incentivization is important, and definitely the economic viability or having to improve farmer incomes as a way to get them to sustain and maintain these secular approaches and systems is key. I could go on, but I feel like definitely we need to equip them and then give them the voice, because they are suffering, we are suffering, because we're also working with them, and we can now feel the impact. We need to wake up, be aware of it, and then start moving.
Thanks, Audrey. That's really very wise words. I also think that policies have to be coupled with economic measures to incentivize or disincentivize different behaviors of farmers or businesses, bigger business as well. But I see, Dominic, you want to react to something that was said or add on, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So what I've seen with farmers who are doing bananas, right? I think they already, and this happened due to COVID. So the moment the cost of fertilizer really went up, the farm inputs and another, farming to that they need, right? They have to be very innovative. And what has happened, you find farmers who never used to keep either pigs, cows before, they're actually doing it. Why? Because they already understand if you have half an acre, 1 acre, right? You can keep around 5 cows. So that means you already get manure. You don't need to worry about fertilizer. Then number 2, from the same farm, you can actually feed your cows. Then that means you're able to get milk. So which has worked very well. And personally, I'm very skeptical about government. I think when you look at the innovation we have in Kenya in terms of AgTech, the government has not really been very supportive of some of these innovation. And I think what farmers require is actually the support from, let's say, the private sector, the NGOs, or the folks who are actually on this call. Are we able to lead them to the market? Because at the end of the day, when you talk to farmers, they'll tell you they find some of the best training in terms of how to farm, how to harvest and all that, but where the market, and the market which is transparent, yeah. So I think it's already happening. When you meet the farmers, they've already been very innovative. I think the question is, how do you share that information? So if I say my agronomist to meet farmers tomorrow, right? Are they equipped to share some of these best practice in terms of they're already doing exactly, but how do they scale it up? Let's say from a 1/4 acre to 1 acre.
Scaling up in terms of size, or scaling up in terms of possibilities also, that's interesting. And you have the software. I see Joe and Renzi to add on or challenge.
Just a quick comment, Piotr. You asked whether governments can lead the change. And I'm a little bit dubious. I mean, because systems thinking is about complexity, and I think the complexity all over is growing to such an extent that governments cannot handle the complexity at all levels. So the question is, how do you enable, or how do you show people that systemic thinking is possible? And I think that the answer is, and it has come out of some of the comments that the participants made, is we need to demonstrate small successes, but those small successes need to be systemic, so that we have, an example of initiatives that addresses all the elements, resources, technology, people, organizational aspects. And once people see those successes and they see them as systemic, then one can probably start thinking about bringing change at a bigger, provincial, regional, provincial, or national level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed, it requires the whole theory of change on how different actors will play their role. And I agree, governments do not always have the capacity, but they are the regulators. And if we, Rose also mentioned, if we recognize that policies are needed, then they have to be set up by regulators. And there are challenges for sure. I also invite everyone again, Ntobeko, you are the facilitator. Please, if you want, we have a lot of knowledge on African food systems too. So if you want to intervene, please go ahead. I want to, yes, you want to?
Yes, thank you very much, Pietro, for that promotion to actually be able to make a comment amongst these distinguished panelists. And I think for me, what becomes very important, we are talking about theory of change, and we are talking about, doing things differently. And I think that's what circularity and circular economy is all about. In my observation and little analysis, I fully agree. Government on their own, they cannot drive this change. And I think as civil society, as business, at some point, we are being unfair to government, expecting them to know everything. And unfortunately, they don't. And for me, partnerships become very important, where business and civil society and government, they sit around at the table and we say, how do we make this thing work for everyone? Because at the end of the day, looking at our history, especially as a continent, and I think, Pietro, you've touched on colonization a bit for a different reason, but there is sometimes mistrust between business and government. And I think we need to get to a level or a point whereby we both realize that whatever we are trying to do, it needs to work, for the better future for all of us. So that is the first point. Maybe we should not expect or even think that government should lead this. And if government is not inviting us as civil society and as business to have meaningful discussions around how do we change things systematically, we need to invite ourselves, but in the most good way, and then say, this is what we do as business, and this is what you can do as government. Also, as business, we don't know everything. Regulation, it's fairly complex, and we need to be sitting around the table to discuss those things. So just a little comment around, what government can do.
Thank you, Ntobeko. We will have questions from the panelists, participants very soon, but I have one specific question from my perspective in Europe. I hope it's relevant. It's about development and humanitarian aid. Only yesterday or 2 days ago, the European Commission again announced a big package of help, food security help, especially for Somalia, but also Ethiopia and other regions. I want to, because we might have also participants from different parts of the world, but it's also relevant probably for African farmers. How does development aid, humanitarian aid, especially for food items, help or distort the development of resilient circular agriculture systems? Of how does it help or distort local farmers? If anyone can, if you think that it's not a relevant question, I accept, and we don't need to go there. But if anyone wants to just shortly reply, because it's a question here in Europe very often. Yes, please, Louis, welcome back. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understand the question. So you're asking if the aid that Europe is sending to communities, specifically, say, for example, for hunger purposes, how that is disturbing the agricultural things. I think how that aid is given to the communities is the most important part. Like in South Africa, there's a feeding scheme program at schools in communities, but the problem with that is the feeding scheme is constructed where outside resources are used to bring food into the schools and then dispersed to the children. So it's always someone outside the community that's benefiting financially, and then the quality and the things that is not always on the standard that's needed. But if one can construct a intervention where one uses local producers to generate the food that's needed for those interventions, then one can really make a big difference and inject quite a big amount of income into the local economy. So I think just the way that the idea is good, because if one is hungry, you cannot really think further than the now. So one needs to solve that problem, unfortunately, in different ways. But if one constructs the how that happens, one can really make a big difference in the communities and in agriculture as well, in the local economy. That's just my
Thank you, Louis. I love the way you replied that Africa can help itself by supporting the local farmers, and that's the. I think I would like to invite all of you to different European stakeholders conferences where this is, because your testimony is very important here. But Dominic just reacted on this too. Please go ahead, Dominic.
Yeah, mine will be quick. So I do think we need financial aid to, of course, I need to be very careful on that one. I think my approach will be, and you know, from the experience, right? Are we able to have this financial, you know, sort of a loan that can go to farmers, but also make it affordable for farmers to get qualified? So we tried, I think 2 years now, with around 6 different groups: potatoes, onions, bananas. They tried to apply for loans, either from a MasterCard, Rockefeller, and what have you, which have been channeled through the commercial banks. And I mean, it has never worked, right? So I think the question is what's not working. So I don't think a financial aid will be the answer. I think the question is, how do you ensure the loans, you know, actually, you know, get to the farmers? And because the farmer, they know when I get the loan, I need to pay. And if I pay, I can grow that loan from 50,000, 60,000, right? I think my bet, I think that would be the approach we need to look at. And also to look at the current loans, where they're not working, where they're not getting to the intended, you know, groups down there at the farm level.
Thanks, Dominic. And that's also what my colleagues at the EB working in agriculture call for: microfinancing rather than big funding, which is very often grabbed by big companies that have capacity to deal with new technologies and so on. But microfinancing can help. I see, Ntobeko, you have a hand, but I will leave you to wrap up the panel discussion during the transition to the question and answers where participants will ask. I wanted to go back to one circular solution that was mentioned to me by Audrey. Audrey, it's about biochar. Can you explain to us the biochar with the technology very quickly? Is it soil improver or is it a fuel? Because I understand biochar can also be burned, but is it circular? So.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Sustainable biochar can definitely be a fossil fuel displacement approach, but in this context, or the context in the way Sabin Sake uses it, is by making sure that biomass waste which would openly be burnt or dumped, right, to increase more greenhouse gas emissions, are rather harnessed, run through a low carbon tech. So basically it's you've got the closed loop or open loop pyrolysis machines that, without the presence of oxygen, you're able to convert waste that are coming from the farmlands, right, which are normally not used, run through the process for it to produce sustainable biochar, which is a more permanent, stable form of carbon. And we know that carbon is food for the soils, right? So in that sense, enabling farmers to use or to make use of the waste that are on the farms, produce biochar out of it, try and amend their soils that are poor or getting degraded as a result of the drought, the excessive heat waves, as a result of loss of biodiversity, get it back in shape, and then be able to increase yields and then food production. So you could have it also being used as a form of fossil fuel displacement by producing more eco-friendly briquettes, or as well, you know, produce more biochar focused on soils. So you could have a biochar blend, which we currently have, or you could have the raw biochar. And the beauty about it as well is how you enable farming communities to not just grow food, but as well sequester carbon, right? Because we know our farmlands are net emitters of greenhouse gas emissions. How do we turn these farmlands into more, into lands that sequester carbon, and as well empower these farming communities to be able to earn income out of it, because we all know about the carbon credit market that is also growing. So in order to also build the resilience of it, they're improving their soils, increasing food production, and as well earning income as a result of sequestering carbon. So in a nutshell.
Thank you, Audrey. So in the priority, I understand biochar for soil improvement because it keeps the nutrients back to soil rather than burning it, even if it could be considered low carbon. I also know that biochar has some water retention capacity, which is also added value. There are two more people who haven't really spoke much. Constantine, I will come back to you with questions because there are very precise questions to you. But Sylvie, I want to give you any, if you want to react, I don't have a precise question for you. Rwanda is one of the very strong on agriculture. Is there anything else you could add?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. As I said, in Rwanda, there is a government willingness and to promote the circularity, and we are working with SMEs to be more innovative, in action, in identifying or not only around waste and recirculation, but to see how the circularity can be promoted to advance the business environment. So with that, around this project, we are looking that at completion, we are working with partners like Africa Circular Economy Alliance, who are also partner of the project, and will help also to upscale or communicate findings at the African region. And in WRI, we are also working with the platform for accelerating the circular economy, which is also another global platform with leaders that seek to promote the circular economy. And because we have only completed the landscaping around the SME, the opportunity in SMEs, and also the gaps and how we look on alignment of policy. So we look forward in the SME development to increase awareness. So we have defined 3 activities, main one, which is the pipeline development, which we look for creating awareness around circular economy in food, agri-food, and there is a specific incubation, a TA facility for SMEs, where we'll be identifying which knowledge gap is there and how we can complement on that. And completing also on the what Luis has shared around creating market linkages. So how do we enable the SMEs and developed product or services around circularity in agri-food to link to the market? Like this is like an access to finance. We are not providing direct funding, but we work also to create business that are innovative, as I have said, and create that linkages with investors, even financial institutions, to create a business case for circularity. And we hope that this will also enable to identify, to create data, a database on what is needed for the policy makers to create an enabling environment that would facilitate that one. So that's what I can add around what was said. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good wrap up. I appreciate this big project of gathering all the knowledge and filling the gaps and also connecting to funding, which is crucial. We will now move to the question and answers and more participations from the participants and questions. I have to review the questions now, but in the transition, if I can ask Ntobeko to maybe just wrap up this panel in discussion, and in the meantime, I just look at the questions. Please, Ntobeko, if you can wrap up in 1 minute.
Thank you, Pietro. In wrapping up, firstly, this was quite a very informative session. Starting from the case studies, the impact that they have. For me, the true meaning of circularity, which talks to society, talks to economy, and talks to the environment, is coming through. And I think that is very important, and that talks to sustainability. And I think, Pietrek, you've had a very good sustainability-related question when you touch on donations from Europe to Africa. And I like Louis' approach to that question, where he localized it into local communities, making the example of school feeding schemes, where people outside those areas are actually supplying food to be consumed. And I think that is where the problem is. And again, Renzi, this is exactly what he is trying to solve with his project, where the communities become the producers of what they consume. And I think for me, that is very critical, where you produce what you consume and you consume what you produce. Now, if we can go back to Europe-Africa relations in terms of donation, it was President Mbeki speaking to the rich countries, which most of them are in Europe. And he said, Africa needs trade and not aid. And it's, for me, that is where the answer to your question comes from, to say, is this food aid from Europe helping in any way? As a immediate intervention, you know, any donation will always be welcome. However, donations usually come with conditions, and those conditions usually favor the donors more than the recipients. And on that, therefore, you know, we need to build capacity, whereby as a recipient, you are in a position, you know, to contribute to those conditions. And also, after the donation has been given as an intermediate relief or as an immediate intervention, what happens after that? You know, what sort of, you know, skills, what sort of technologies are being left behind in the continent? I mean, if you look at
Tobacco, sorry, you will, sorry for that, for stopping. You will finalize, wrap up after the whole event, okay?
Yes,
Please
yes.
keep your points.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I knew I will open the Pandora box with different opinions about donations. I don't, but you open another Pandora box about trade, but let's not go back to that now. Because there are concrete questions. We have another half an hour, a bit more, from the public, from the participants. Konstantin, thank you for your patience. There are a few questions to you. I will ask a few of them, okay? And please answer quickly, shortly to all of them. So, do you serve the fertilizer coming from black soldier flies, not only larvae, but also fertilizer? Do you think larvae, I mean, do you see a challenge that larvae can be a danger for local biodiversity? To what extent are you now commercially sustainable and able to replicate the scale-based and business case? So about business. Do you have actually packaging involved? And how is it circular? Is it single use, or how do you do it? Sorry, so too many questions. I stop now. Okay.
Yeah, sure. So let me start with selling fertilizer. Yes, we do. We are selling our organic fertilizer. We are selling it because the manufactured fertilizer now has becoming very, very expensive. So farmers are learning into organic fertilizer. Yeah. So again, there was a question like, how are they embracing it? So one, is very cheap for them to afford, and secondly, it improves the soil structure. So that one is better. So the second question, like, do I see the larvae like a very invasive species? They are not. So the black soldier flies, let me start with the fly themselves. So these insects are considered manifest because after being reproduced, after being hatched from the egg, the insects are not eating the organic waste. So what they eat, they only drink water until they die. So for around 10 days. And so with that reason, they're not transmitting any diseases. So they're very, very safe. And for the maggot itself, so they're very nutritious. So protein 60%, fat 30%, and live and amino acids. That is very essential for animal growth. So the next question about the scalability, yeah. So Amanda asked the question. We started last year and we were able to raise some fund, and with that fund, we were able to build our structure. So this year we are starting our commercialization. So last year revenue was only from the pilot. So this year we are able to commercialize and we are sustainable. And so the last question on the packaging, yeah. So we are selling in a bulk. So we are selling from 10 kg to 100 kg. We are not selling it as small bag. So we are trying to avoid the use of plastic bags on that. And so we're using recycle bags for selling in a bulk. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. We actually haven't touched upon packaging in the event today. Thanks for that. It is also part to be thought through in a systemic manner that also should be circular packaging. But I feel there should be another webinar for that. I might have more questions, but let me go to other panelists. Maybe to our first case study. So Louis, do you work with existing township-based incubators, or do you establish a standalone incubator? That's first.
Yes.
Can we go ahead?
Yes, we do, and that is actually our model. We work with existing initiatives in townships. That's much more effective than starting from scratch.
Okay, great. Do you aim at eliminating meat products completely, or how do you see the two completing one another?
At the moment, we don't aim to eliminate meat products. We are just focusing on vegetable growing at the moment, but we would love to see how the two can incorporate with one another and work together. Maybe me and Constantine can in the future see what we can do together and get both of them going.
Thanks, Louis. This one is about packaging. So if you sell locally, you can avoid packaging because there are different ways to transport. But what if you want to access more distant markets?
So yes, that is why the local market is for us so important, growing locally, selling locally. But then once we reach the formal market or create a product that can be sold into the formal market, our products are, we are currently working on a chili sauce that is in a glass bottle that can be reused. So that is something that we keep in mind when we develop those products. And to keep it, the look of the product must also be good. So because we know the formal market has all the requirements.
It is a glass bottle for chili sauce, not plastic bottle.
Glass bottle, yes.
Okay, last question is a bit longer, sorry, but do you aim to link up with existing organizations and individuals active in this space, such as the township farmers who work for early childhood development centers, to establish food gardens and food kitchens?
That is one of our main focuses, is looking for specifically ECD centers or early childhood development centers, because there's a lot of things that's already in place there. There's normally a kitchen that's already established for the kids. There's a good community connection with the parents. So there's a good buy-in or a wanting to support that center. So that is ideally a place where we want to start one of our agricultural hubs as well. So that is definitely something that we look for, and we are doing that currently in Durban as well.
Thanks. Thank you. That's it, Louis, for now. Dominic, there is a question about how is your organization financed, and how are you working to ensure financial sustainability with the interventions and enterprises with whom you work?
Yeah, so it's been a mix of lots of bootstrapping, family savings, right? But then, of course, we want investment from there are investors now, right? Who have been quite supportive, who believe in our mission. But then, of course, we're looking at running a business which is sustainable, profitable. I think we see what is happening in the VC world. So that means any business you are building, you have to think about sustainability. Almost like yesterday, not tomorrow, yeah. In terms of the groups we work with, I think our retention is actually almost like 95%. Today we enter our latest report, which was done by, independent organization. And they talked to a number of farmers that we've been working with. And Net Promoter Score, very exciting. And then for us, it's all about how do you create a model which is more sustainable for them in terms of they don't need to worry about who's going to buy my produce and all that. But we've also seen farmers who are doing potatoes before introducing other crops in between, things like carrots. So we encourage them any product they can grow because they already understand our value proposition in terms of the pricing, how we work. We encourage them to do more. I think for us, it's all about giving them a market, but also transparency. We already have e-commerce, so they understand from when you buy a product from them, what is our margin. Because again, for farmers, one of the assumptions that if you buy produce from the farm, you are making a lot of money. But e-commerce allows them to understand that's not the fact. But I think it's all about how do you grow the crops, but also again introduce them to other service providers. This could be either anyone can do farm input, the capital, the training, and all that. Yeah.
Thanks, Dominic. There is one very relevant question: gender and youth, and I would like to ask Rosa and Sylvie and Audrey if is there. So it's about how do we ensure that just transition is also valuable or favorable for women and youth, because they are very often the most disadvantaged along the agri-value chain. Is there any example in your cases, in your programs, to support youth and women in the transition? Rose?
I'll go first, and then maybe Sylvie can chime in. I think issues of inclusivity really require intentionality and just the willingness to actually include these marginalized, so to say, groups. What I've seen and what I can quote for the purpose of answering that question, IKEA is very intentional in inclusivity and especially bringing in youth and women. And we've actually implemented a project funded by IKEA that was specifically targeting youth, but now it was more men and women, but it had a bracket of age, which then saw the young people applying for the program. And because it was specifically targeted and developed for them and designed for them, it was able to attract those within that without having to compete with other age brackets that are maybe more developed in the space. So I think, just to sum up my answer, intentionality and just a deliberate action towards inclusivity is what will ensure a just transition.
Thank you, Rose. If Sylvie, you would like. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Rose. To compliment on what she has just said, I can say that the circular economy and this kind of project we are starting, they are the first of their kind around the agri-food and sort of. So as we are starting as we are doing the landscaping or identifying the SMEs to be supported, this will also give insight and information on how these special groups are also included in the business and how are they affected. So it will also inform on the future interventions. So they are also part of the intervention planned. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvie. There are a few questions on finances, but I will not touch upon them. I can only tell everyone that during the World Circular Economy Forum in Kigali that you can join online, there will be a whole session about financing. So I invite you to go there and your questions will be answered. Audrey, please, you are still with us. I haven't seen you. Please go ahead.
Yes, sorry, poor network. I think one way for us, we've started making sure that women become resource mobilizers. That's what we call them. So for instance, with the biomass wastes that are in abundance on the farmlands, we have a group or network of women who actually are the ones that collect it and then mount it up at the place that we need it. So making sure they are involved at the start of the value chain is really important. And then the second bit, in order to ensure women are in, is I think the question of ownership of land or access to land for them to grow more food. And for us, involving them in the process and bring them to the table so that they get to understand what it means to grow food organically and produce more nutrient dense and healthy food, and having the men as well be present and understand that, you know, going organic or growing food would mean that women should now have access to land, you know, and have access to grow the vegetables and the types of fruits they want. And I feel like that's a way to involve more women and then their children. Yeah.
Great, thanks so much. I love the intersectionality really approach, and this is really to be supported. It's not only circularity, it's not only waste management, it's a lot about thinking the social and that nobody is left behind. Thank you so much for that. I will stop questions and answers now. I thank everybody for patience, because now we will move to this most interactive part of the webinar, which is the open mic or open discussion. You can please ACEAN team help me to choose how should we move on with that. But one rule here: if you have the mic, please keep your remark quick, fast, and also make sure that there is no noise. Thank you so much if you are joining us from a bus or a train, but if your connection is poor, please better write your remark in the chat. So who should go first? Please, ACEAN team, let me know how to do that, or you enable the microphone. Everyone, please free to have your remark. I see many faces here and many names that I know, and I'm very happy. I know you have all much to say, so don't hesitate. Just keep your intervention very short, because then we can have more interventions. Please ask to please raise your hand. Anyone who is the participant. And now we have 60 participants. If you would like to react on any of the topics or add something that was not touched upon. Okay, there is an open question. Okay, please, I give you a few more minutes to think about your question. There is one issue that bothers me very often is that from the European perspective, you know that we import a lot of food from Africa, fruits, coffee, cocoa, and so on. And we now, with the new rules, we require much more sustainability and circularity. And on one hand, it's good, because we will, in Europe, will eat healthier food and with less impact on environment in Africa. But on the other hand, it may be a bit exclusive, and only big companies, big business big food exporters will be able to adapt their production in Africa to be more circular. So I just want to make a remark that with my colleagues at the EB also, we always ask that if we require in Europe, we also have to give support, so that not only big businesses will jump on this now, but the support will really go to small farmers to enable them to improve their practices, to meet the requirements of sustainable food, sustainable cocoa, sustainable fruits and coffee. I see somebody raised a hand. I just don't know who. It's Ntobeko. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Pietra. I've got a question for Louis. Looking at the size of the kit, does that limit the crops that you can grow? I mean, considering that some crops like your butternut, they spread. Does it limit the crops that you can grow in any way?
Yes, so I'll just quickly see if I can get that picture on the share screen. Sorry, I don't know what's wrong with the thing now, but okay, I'll stop sharing. The garden is mostly made for anything that grows above the ground, but the kit comes in a black container. So that black container is a hard shell black container that then one can place underneath the hanging garden, and then fill that with soil and plant your root vegetables in it. So how it works is each pot is watered individually, and then the excess water runs into the center pipe and out the bottom. So if you place the black container underneath it, you will then reuse or recycle that water that comes out of the pots and into your growing kit at the bottom, and then you can grow your root vegetables in that. So anything that crawls or anything that grows too big, you can use that black container for.
Thank you.
Thank you. I encourage everyone to share a few thoughts if they want. You can raise your hand like this. If you don't know how to make it, do it electronically, and we will, for that, you need to open your camera. Yeah, I see Lara. Please go ahead, Lara.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to ask a question to the panel on access to finance, because as we know, there's a lot of money that's being invested in Africa, especially through development finance institutions, but then it's quite hard for local farmers to access these funds. So I just wanted to ask the panel if they had any idea on how funding can be made more accessible for local communities, and also if there is enough funding available for businesses like the ones we have talked about today.
Thanks, Lara. If anyone from the panelists, I feel it could be a question to Dominic also on financing, how to access. Dominic, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So, so what I've seen in microfinance are more, because these are actually at the rural level, right? And these are folks who interact with the farmers on a daily basis. Sorry, gonna turn my camera on. Sorry about that. So they work with the farmers on a daily basis, right? They understand each other quite well. And what I've seen, because farmers are able to guarantee each other, or the COP just basically guarantee the farmers, right? And what I find, the farmers are able to secure these loans faster with less hassles, right? And also what I find, the default is very low. So I think rather than having these funds go through, the big, commercial banks that have got no clue what happened at the farm level, I think my advice or my input would be, let's work with microfinance, because you find there's actually microfinance at every local level. That's number one. Yeah.
Thanks, Dominic. I saw Victoria raising the real hand, but before that, because I think Audrey has also an answer for the financing.
Yes, a quick one on that. For us, we see the need to incentivize farmers and democratize finance. How? We will incorporate organizations that are passionate about multiplying their climate impact, making sure that they're more regenerative farming communities that are not just practicing more climate adaptive approaches to growing food, but are doing right by the environment. So for us, we ensure that there's a network of farmers, right, which we call the Regenerative Farmer Network. These are farmers that are aware about how to grow more nutrient-dense food. They're doing their best to preserve their ecosystem. So the corporate organizations then support these networks of farmers directly, right? And then the money comes down to the network of farmers to incentivize them to keep on engaging in such practices. So that's one way, and that leans more towards ensuring that there's more carbon finance or carbon credits for farmers who are sequestering carbon and doing right by the environment. So that's one way.
Thanks, Audrey. The conditionality of financing, so that to really finance the good practices rather than wrong, and we see a wrong approach that in Europe very often, unfortunately. But yeah, good, great. So Victoria, you please go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to mention about the humanitarian context, where they are very often we have very paternalist approach, which is sometimes is really needed at the first stages of a humanitarian situation, but not always is like this. And I think it's important that to pass the message that is needed to work like in a recovery of all the systems that they are already in place, all the resources, the people, their networks, their seeds, and many other, and their knowledge. So very often the humanitarian is damaging all what is already in place or has been for centuries, forever, no? So I think if there are policies or there is a kind of documents, or we raise more the voice on good practices and circularity is something also that brings this regenerative agriculture, agroecology, which is putting in practice all what we are talking about, no, in agriculture. So I think it's important to have these approaches and raise the voices within the humanitarian to avoid to make more mistakes in places where they are suffering a lot, but still we can connect it with other networks and resources that they are in the region.
Thank you for this voice, Victoria. I wish all of you could speak to the European Commission to improve their financing systems so that this conditionality is humanitarian has to be coupled with development and the smart development long term. Thanks. Pavel was before you, Rose. So please, Pavel, go ahead with your remark.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this webinar and a lot of new ideas and valuable knowledge. I do have the two questions, like the open questions. The one is that for me, the circular economy often comes from the bottom, from the people. It's going upstream. And I'd like to know the African perspective and maybe some processes to find the talents, the change makers, and so-called local heroes in the communities that can lift that innovations. That is the one question. And the second one is about the plant-based diet, because we know that the food industry have the significant carbon footprint, and the plant-based diet, vegetarian products, vegan products have the lower carbon footprint. And is there any like this, do these vegetarian diets are considered in the African food system to tackle the climate change? That's my second question. Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much. One more time.
The first agents of change. I like this also to say like that. And as I give time everyone to reply about the vegetarian versus meat sector system, I ask Rose to react because probably that was on something else.
No, mine was on financing because how I've seen it even in previous programs that I've implemented, I think financing should be segmented because different businesses have different needs, and a proper needs assessment needs to be conducted because maybe I need a small ticket size to take me to the next level. And because the requirements for the ticket size and the products that the financial institutions have do not favor me, then I miss out on even the smallest of the ticket size that I could get to unlock the next level that would then help me qualify for these bigger ticket sizes. So I think the segmentation and the design of the products should be needs-based as opposed to how it is done as a lump. Everyone who is in agribusiness and you have a revenue of, I don't know how so much you can apply for these, but then it leaves out the bigger portion of the businesses because especially in this agri-circularity, they are very small and do not have most of the requirements that are required for the ticket sizes available. So that was my contribution in terms of financing.
Great, thanks. I actually wanted to ask Johan, and I see you raise your hands for this many different questions and remarks now on financing, on vegetarian, on agents of change. So what's your reaction, Johan? Renzi.
Just a quick comment on the aspect of change agents. So I think there are two aspects to it. The one is finding these champions, these local champions, and therefore working with institutions that already have a track record and a history in the community is always much better. But what we find recently is that as you strengthen, we call them agripreneurs, as you strengthen these champions in the local community, they start taking on advocacy and awareness roles themselves, as well as sort of consultation roles. So, for example, our agripreneurs now act as advisors to the home growers. So you can, over time, strengthen the ability of your change agents and sort of use them over a wider front of activities.
Yeah, it's about building the agents, how to build them, how to find them, but all of them will fight in the same front. I want to come back to the question of Pavel. How is vegetarian endorsed versus the willingness to eat meat. And we all know the climate implications of meat, but how is it also, there is also a cultural aspect here, which we cannot underestimate. So if anyone wants to say something about this tricky remark, which is part of the agriculture system, food system. Maybe it's too complex for the last 2 minutes. Tobacco, what should we do? I don't see any other hands, but if you can reply this one, please.
I've got one more question. I've got one more question, Pietro, before I wrap up. It's actually for Constantine. Your production rate, because your solution solves two problems, one being food waste. How many kgs of food waste do you need to produce 1 kg of your product? And also, another question to Louis. I believe you haven't had a trade agreement with Constantine to supply you with fertilizer. The fertilizer that you use currently, can you give us a bit more information on it? Is it organic fertilizer? How and where do you source it?
Yeah, thank you, Tobacco. So let me start with how many food waste I'm using to produce 1 kg of protein. So we are using 3 to 4 kg to produce 1 kg of protein. Yeah, 3 to 4 kg of food waste. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a conversion.
Thank you.
It's what we found with working with different growing technologies like hydroponics and so on is that if one works in the communities, the skill level that you work with, unfortunately, is a bit lacking. And then if you need to mix a specific fertilizer into your system on a regular basis, there's a lot of different opportunities for that fertilizer to not be used exactly how one hopes it to be used. So we needed to find a fertilizer that almost do the job for us, and that and it's called a controlled release fertilizer. So it is pellets that one mix into the pots that almost works like a gearbox. So in the first 2 months, a certain amount of them release their fertilizer, and then they automatically tell the next bunch, okay, now it's your turn. And then the next 2 months, so until they reach the 6-month period, and then they finish releasing. So it makes the system much easier. But we do use a organic fertilizer to boost the plant. So that controlled fertilizer is only giving the baseline of plant food that's necessary. But I would love to, I already sent Constantine a message. I would love to connect with him to see how we can swap out our organic fertilizer for what you might be able to do for us. Because as soon as we introduced a booster, our plants almost grew twice as fast. So and if one can produce that locally, that's even much better. So and then also addressing the wastages that's always there in agriculture. There's just a lot of additional good things that can come from introducing Constantine's method of working into what we already do.
Thank you, Nico, for those questions and your answers, which bring us back to the circularity, the very core of this webinar, and why we meet all here. That circularity in agriculture can also be found, and we just found between those two cases a good collaboration, which can be replicated in many other places. I will now close the questions and answers. Oh, one thing only, Pavel, your concern about meat turned to be maybe not so significant, because the consumption of meat in Africa is much lower, is almost insignificant. So maybe it's not a big concern. And production of meat or consumption of meat is anyway much more sustainable than the European or the US one. So that's why there was no concerns about this. And I thank you all very much for your participation, your questions. I wish to see you more often in different webinars regarding African circular economy and global. And maybe to see you in Kigali or at the World Circular Economy Forum on the 6th, 7th, and 8th of December. Thank you very much again. Keep in touch. And I hand it over to Ntobeko for the wrapping up of the whole session. Thank you.
This was a very interesting and exciting session. Pietrek, thank you very much for your good moderation, to be able to curb the excitement and keep all of us in check. Thank you very much to all our panelists and everyone who has contributed, and all the participants for borrowing us your 2 hours today. We hope that this session has answered questions that you might have come here with, and that it stimulated the conversation to move forward on other platforms as well. Definitely the conversation should not stop here. As mentioned, the recording of this session will be shared together with the summary document of the learnings and conclusions of this workshop. And the aim of that is to further the knowledge sharing in the food systems in Africa. On the World Circular Economy Forum, it will be live streamed during the 6th and the 7th of December. So for those who cannot join us in Kigali, Rwanda, please join us by registering on the link, which will be shared in the chat. And the chat was very active today and busy. In case you've missed anything, I believe the summary of the chat will also be shared together with the video recording. For any further World Circular Economy Forum related information, including these workshops, African studios, please feel free to contact us on our email address for the WCEF. It is currently shown on the screen. And lastly, after closing the session, you will see a pop-up of a survey with few questions that should not take you more than a minute to complete. If you could please give us that feedback so that we can improve our delivery of these workshops in the future and see what you would like to see more of in our future workshops. So that feedback would be highly appreciated. In this moment, if there are no other questions or contributions, I will at this point close the meeting. On behalf of the ACEAN team, I would like to thank all of us again, and looking forward to see you on our future events. Thank you very much.